I hope this file is visible, the Word file.
Yes,
Yes,
sir. Yes, sir. It's visible, sir.
Okay. So yeah, so we were discussing about the testing of the generators, and in the last class we looked at it that there are these four categories of generator depending upon the size. The assembly method varies, and depending upon which type, which category of generator it is, the field and factory testing will vary. So then we looked at some particular things about the specifications for testing and how to doing the test procedures and all. And then we started discussion on the different tests. So last class we discussed on the resistance test of armature and field winding, then the dielectric test of armature and field winding, and the insulation resistance test of armature and field winding, and also the stator core loop test. So meanwhile, there was this one point which was there last class about the resistance, this polarization index. When we measure the insulation resistance, what is observed is that the resistance usually increases with time. So that polarization index is defined as the insulation resistance value obtained after 10 minutes to the value obtained after 1 minute of testing. Is that thing happening? What is the underlying principle behind that? No one looked at it? Tony?
yes, sir.
Did you look at that particular thing? Why is that thing happening? Why the insulation resistance is increasing with time?
No, sir.
Okay, because this was your question, so I thought maybe you are interested and look it up. So actually, I mean, conceptually, if you look at it, basically what is happening is that the insulation which is there for your winding, that is basically acting like a capacitor actually. So here what we are doing is that we are applying the voltage across the your insulation, and this insulation then acts like capacitor, and it keeps on absorbing some charges, that is known as a dielectric absorption which occurs. So as you understand is that if you put a voltage supply across a capacitor, gradually the voltage will build up. It will not be instantaneous. It will take some time and the voltage will build up across the capacitor. So same thing happens here, that the dielectric in the insulator that absorbs charges, and so the voltage across that thing builds up gradually. So equivalently you can say that the resistance or the impedance which is effective for that insulator, that builds up over a period of time, and that's why this difference is also. So we expose it for the subject it to that particular voltage for 10 minutes, and there is a build up of the charges accumulated in that insulator, and that is actually equivalently reflecting as the insulation resistance increasing for a period of time. And, so that's how this thing occurs, and polarization index value, as it says here, should be 2 or higher. So the insulation resistance should be almost double after 10 minutes as compared to what is there at 1 minute. So this all we discussed. Then we discussed the stator core loop test also, and we discussed how this particular thing is very, sort of an aggressive test. It shakes down the stator core and compounds it, and therefore the retorquing of the force might be needed. So we'll continue today with our discussion, and we'll look at few more tests which are there for synchronous generators, and then probably move on. So as we discussed in the last class was that the stator core loop test is somewhat outdated, and that was what was traditionally used for testing the stator core. But there are now better and improved methods like this ELCID, electromagnetic core imperfection detector test. So usually this is what is preferred these days for testing the core of the stator. So as it says here, this electromagnetic core imperfection detector test, ELCID, this was introduced somewhere around 1989, and it is a new method for testing the stator core. This ELCID test can be performed with the rotor removed or in place, either way. So even if the rotor is there in place or it is not there, this can be conducted. However, the test is most commonly performed with the rotor removed. That is the most common way. This method of testing is not uniformly accepted by all North American manufacturers and agencies as a substitute for the stator core root test. So, I mean, but this is dated because this particular document which we are referring to, this is from the 1990s. So that time this test had been there in practice for less than 10 years, almost 10 years. So that time it might not have been that popular, but now it is really accepted, well accepted across. So this test requires that the stator core be excited to 4% of the rated flux, as opposed to 100% when using the stator core root test. So as you can see, this is not that intensive and not that very aggressive testing is not there, because here we are exciting the core to only 4% of the rated flux as compared to what we are doing in the stator core root test of 100%. This reduction in flux density usually requires wrapping approximately 20 turns of number 12 AWG toroidally around the stator core. So a particular cable specification is given and number of turns is also given. So that is wound around the stator core. The power required to obtain the reduced flux level is usually no more than 20 amperes. So as you can see, it's the power level needed is also very low, and it can be managed in a very easy manner. So this ELCID test uses a special sensing coil which is routed over the interior of the stator core bore to detect flux anomalies. So what is happening here is that in the previous case, what we were doing was that we were subjecting the core to rated flux, and we were observing the hot spots which were forming in the core. But here it is not like that. Here, instead of subjecting it to 100% of flux, we are just subjecting to 4% of the rated flux. But there is this special sensing coil which is put on the interior side of the stator core. So the stator core which is there, you wound this number 12 AWG American wire gauge type of wire across the stator core with 20 number of turns. And now in the inner core, in the inner diameter, you can say, the stator bore, we put the special sensing coil, and that is good enough for detecting the flux anomalies. So if there is a flux anomaly somewhere, there is a higher concentration of flux or some distortion of flux, that thing can be detected by that sensing coil. And the flux anomalies indicate interlaminar insulation deterioration and potential core hotspots, which must be further investigated. So it is sort of very less invasive technique, a very simple technique, and with that special sensing coil, you can easily identify along the inner core of the inner periphery of the stator core if there is some error or there is some interlaminar insulation is deteriorating and some hotspot is liable to form, that can be identified. So this is more common these days, ELCID test. This figure here is just a simple photo of a rotor assembled and shipped separately from the stator. So there is a rotor of a category 2 generator. So as you can recall, the category 2 generators are those where the rotor and the stator both are assembled at the factory, but they are shipped separately to the powerhouse, usually as two separate components or three components, with the stator being in two different halves. And this category of generators, typically the rating is 6 MVA to 20 MVA. So let's move ahead then. Next test is known as the phase rotation check. So the discussion of interfacing electrical vectors versus the physical machine rotation is always very complex and prone to errors in the interpretation. So this is actually, I mean, as you can also appreciate when we were discussing that, there are different number of poles, and usually this, as you can understand, any hydro generator specifically will have a very large number of poles. So having 60, 70, 80 poles is also not really a very rare thing. It's common actually. So right from maybe 6 poles, 8 poles, 10 poles to way up to 72 poles or 80 poles or something like that. So because this very large number of poles are there, so as you can understand, the winding will be much more complex, and the I mean, in terms of electrical vector, it is easy to draw, but how you physically have the winding with respect to those vector arrangements, that is quite complex, and there might be some errors in putting the winding properly. So the phasing shown in diagrams in a utilities office files often differs from the field implementation of the phasing scheme by utility line method. So that is a chance that it can occur. So this test eliminates any possibility of connecting the generator out of phase with the existing utility system. So basically the idea is that, as you can understand, it's a three-phase winding, and now for each stator core, I mean in the stator core, there are basically there will be only three phases, but these three phases will be composed of a very large number of windings. So what is the sequence of winding and whether it has been wound in the proper fashion or not? Because if you reverse the winding sequence, if you instead of ABC, if it is ACB, then the direction of rotation will change. So it can cause problems in terms of operation. So this is the objective here for the phase rotation check, that the winding has been wound properly and the phase sequence is maintained properly. So this test should be performed across the generator breaker for small units and with the appropriate potential transformer circuits for larger units. So for smaller units you can just directly connect it, and whereas if it is a larger unit, then appropriate potential transformers need to be taken into connection. And the objective is to confirm that the vector phase rotation of the generator matches the vector phase rotation of the system. So as simple as that, if it is a clockwise rotating phase system, then your generator phasor should also be having the clockwise rotation and not anti-clockwise rotation. So to ensure that the winding has been wound properly and the phase sequence has been maintained properly, this test is performed, phase rotation check. Then next one is the no load and short circuit saturation tests. So these couple of tests, they help us identify the other parameters of the synchronous machine. So as we understand, if you recall the equivalent circuit of a synchronous machine, then you have two important parameters going there. One is the armature resistance, another is the synchronous reactance. So for armature resistance, we already discussed the first test, which was the resistance test of armature and field winding, that is done to identify the armature resistance and also the field resistance. But so far we have not identified the synchronous reactance. So this test here, the no load and short circuit saturation tests, they help identify the synchronous reactance and also some other parameters. So these are two tests. One is done at no load, another at a short circuit condition. So we'll look at both of them briefly. The no load saturation test, also called the open circuit saturation test, is performed with the armature terminals open circuited and the field winding eccentric. Okay, so the armature terminals are open circuited. So what it means is that there will be no armature current which will be flowing. So armature circuit is not complete. So you are inducing the EMF. So there is this EMF EA which is induced, but there is no current flowing. So at the terminals, the same EA is present. So there is no IA flowing. There is no voltage drop in the armature resistance and the synchronous reactance. Just whatever is the EMF induced, that entire EMF induced is appearing across the terminals. And the machine is driven at the rated terminal voltage. So this test confirms that the predicted excitation will produce the predicted terminal voltage. So basically, it's the open circuit saturation test is a relationship between the excitation and the produced voltage. So between your EMF induced in the machine to the field current which you provide on the rotor side on the DC circuit. So it is a correlation between the EA versus IF. So that is the open circuit saturation test, and this helps us identify that because and why this word saturation is coming here. You can again relate it to what I told earlier, is that any magnetic field, any magnetic element which is being exposed to magnetic field, it has two zones of operation. In one zone, which is the unsaturated zone, the induced EMF and the applied flux will vary linearly. But once it enters the saturation region, that means the amount of magnetic field which that particular device can hold, the actual magnetic field is approaching that limit. Then what happens is that the saturation occurs, and then if you increase the magnetic flux further, the voltage induced doesn't increase linearly, rather it tapers off. There is a saturation which sets in. So this test helps us identify that what is actually the curve, that saturation curve for that given synchronous machine. Accordingly, we can always ensure it can be designed in such a way that the rated flux is always in the unsaturated zone and not going into the saturation zone, because then non-linearity and non-linear behavior sets in. So that is the open circuit saturation test. Another one related is the short circuit saturation test. Very similar, but with a distinct difference. So here, the short circuit saturation test is also known as the synchronous impedance test. And actually, this is where you find the synchronous reactance and all. So it is performed with the armature terminals short circuited. So in the first case, the armature terminals were open circuited. In the second case, the armature terminals are short circuited. So that means there is no external load. The load is zero, or the terminals are shorted together. And the field winding is excited. The machine is driven at rated speed, and the curve of the armature current versus the field current is recorded, as the field current is changed from 0 to a value which will produce the rated armature current. So the first one, open circuit test, is performed at the rated terminal voltage, whereas the second one, the short circuit saturation test, is performed at the rated armature current. So the armature terminals are all shorted together, and the field winding is varied in such a way that you get the rated current which is flowing in the armature windings. Usually the voltage will be lower here because it's shorted, so a higher voltage is not needed. At a very low voltage only, you will have the rated armature current flowing. So both these tests are used in conjunction with the winding resistance values, which we have found earlier through the resistance test, to calculate generator efficiency and other essential synchronous machine parameters. So you can identify these parameters: the synchronous impedance, short circuit ratios or transient reactance, etc., and also the generator efficiency. So all these parameters, along with the resistance test, if we do the no load short circuit and short circuit saturation test, then we have all the parameters of the machine. We can identify the electrical parameters. So synchronous impedance we have already discussed, and we know sub-transient reactance is something which comes into picture when there is transient behavior of the machine. During sudden throw off of a load, or when you there is a sudden shift in the load, then, or if there is a fault which is occurring in the system, then suddenly the current will tend to shoot up. So during those conditions, there is another type of reactance which comes into picture, which is the sub-transient reactance. That is important in terms of, especially in the fault analysis, because the sub-transient reactance should have a particular value to limit that fault current to a reasonable limit. So that is the idea behind that, and will not go in much detail. Short circuit ratio here is another term which also I just put here for your understanding. Short circuit ratio, or in short we call it SCR, is a measure of the stability of an electromechanical generator, and it is defined as the ratio of the field current required to produce the rated armature voltage at open circuit to the field current required to produce the rated armature current at the short circuit. So this is what the graph looks like for this short circuit ratio and the two tests. So as you can see, this one is the open circuit characteristic. And so for this open circuit characteristic, so there are two y-axes here. One is the open circuit voltage plotted here, and on the secondary axis, we have a short circuit armature current, and horizontal axis is the field current. So once we do the open circuit characteristic, that time the armature terminals are kept open circuited and the field winding current is varied so as to get the rated terminal voltage. So you get this particular section, and if you extend further, you can get the further section also. So that is the open circuit characteristic. Short circuit characteristic, as we discussed, is that you short the terminals, armature terminals, and again you vary the field current so that the rated armature current is to mean. So this type of characteristic is obtained. So if so here, as you can see, for some value of field current, this OA value, you get the rated terminal voltage in the open circuit test, and for some other value of current, this OD, you get the rated armature current in the short circuit test. So this short circuit ratio is nothing but the ratio of OA to OD, because as it says here, ratio of field current required to produce the rated armature voltage, which is this OA value at open circuit, to the field current required to produce the rated armature current at the short circuit, which is OD. So your OA over OD will give you your short circuit ratio, and that is having some implication in terms of the stability of the generator. There are some standard values for this. Usually this short circuit ratio for turbo generators, that means your non-salient pole generators which are used in steam turbines. For them this is usually in the range of 0.5 to 0.8, whereas for hydro generators which are having large number of poles and salient poles, for them this ratio is in the ratio 1:1.4, around that range. So those are some standard values in which this should fall. Any questions so far? Then there are some tests for the current transformers, and as we can understand, and probably
Sir?
many, yeah.
Sir, can you please explain me once more the SCR, short circuit ratio?
What is the difficulty, Kashif? Can you say what you didn't understand here? In the graph?
Sir, actually this is the ratio of... No,
You have
sir.
confusion in
Yes,
the
sir.
graph?
Yes, sir. In the graph. In the
So
graph.
these are two. Okay. So these are two different curves. One curve here, this OCC is the open circuit characteristic, which we have obtained through the open circuit test. And as we said, for open circuit test, we keep the armature terminals open circuited. There is, I mean, they are not closed. The circuit is not complete, and you just vary the field current. So as you understand, as you vary the field current, the flux changes and the induced EMF changes. So, and the machine is running at the rated speed, right? So you get this type of a curve, and at some particular value of field current, you will get the rated voltage. If you increase it further, the increase in voltage will also be there, but as you see, the saturation region will come and it will be more non-linear. Here also it is shown as slightly non-linear. So in this region, it is more or less linear. Might be slight non-linearity might be there, but in further region, there is more non-linearity. So we always want to operate in this region here. So that is open circuit test. Then second one, this curve is coming from the short circuit test. In this case, you short the armature terminal voltages. That means they are connected together just with a conductor without any load in between them. So in this case, as you can understand, the particular thing here, we want to flow the rated armature current in the armature terminals. So here again, we vary the field current till the rated armature current flows, and that rated armature current, this type of graph you get. And now short circuit ratio, what it says is that the ratio of field current needed for having your rated terminal voltage in the OCC divided by the field current needed for your rated armature current in the SCC. So in this graph, it will be OA divided by OD. That is how you will get the short circuit ratio.
Right, sir. Okay.
Let's move ahead. Then we have the current transformer test. So this current transformer is a very interesting and very important component of the entire system. And we will look at this in more detail when we talk about the protection system, which is there for the hydroelectric equipment in the apartment. So current transformer is different from the regular transformer. As you can understand, many of you, those who are from electrical background will probably know. For others also, as you understand, transformers are the devices which are used for stepping up or stepping down the voltage levels. That is the primary function. But there are these devices which are known as the instrument transformers, and there are two types of instrument transformer. One is the current transformer, and another is the potential transformer, CT and PT. So these current transformers and potential transformers, they are used basically for measurement purpose. So if you have a very high value of current or potential or voltage which is there in your circuit and you want to measure it, so it's always advisable that you scale it down to a small range where you can easily use the equipment and safely measure it. So that is the function of the current transformer, that if there is a very high current circuit, it scales down. So the number of turns in that transformer are arranged in such a manner that on the secondary side for measurement, you get the current reduced in a proportionate manner to a very small value, typically 0 to 5 amperes or 0 to 15 amperes or something like that. So these current transformers, they are an integral part of the protection system specifically, because as we understand, when we have a protection system, we want to always monitor that how much is the amount of current which is flowing in the circuit, and if there is some a fault, this current will tend to shoot up, and it should be your protection system should be able to detect that type of abnormal behavior, and accordingly, the relay will give a circuit signal to the circuit breaker, and it will trip the circuit. So this current transformer forms a part of the protection system. And so as it says here, all CTs associated with the generator for functions such as protective relaying are given routine tests as identified by ANSI standard C57.13. So that is the standard which gives the details of these tests needed for the CTs. So we'll not go into details of this. If someone is interested, they can look it up. So these tests confirm that the CTs are functioning as designed. So it's very important to ensure that the CTs are functioning as per the design requirements. The manufacturer should be required to provide ratio correction values and excitation curves as a standard part of the tests. So these two things, ratio correction curve means any transformer will have the turns ratio. So how many number of turns are there in the primary winding to the secondary winding. And so there is a rated, there is a designed value, how it is designed, but with time, with operation, there might be some errors or anomalies which might be introduced. So those particular things need to be monitored and corrected for. And also the excitation curve is similar to your this, because all these devices, they are electromechanical devices, electromagnetic devices also in terms of the principle of operation. So transformer also is an electromagnetic device, and there is a magnetic field which is being set up. So what type of excitation curve? This is also known as the excitation curve, DOCC. What type of excitation curve is there for that CT? That also needs to be monitored. It should be operating in the unsaturated linear zone rather than the saturated zone. So these CTs are normally used for the generator differential and generator neutral grounding protective relays. We will look at this when we look at the protection system, and accuracy is essential. So that also is a part of the test procedure. Then there are a set of tests for determining the efficiency. So as we discussed earlier when we were discussing the conceptual understanding of synchronous generators, is that there is the efficiency. You need to determine how much is the losses and what is the power output, and then you can do the efficiency. So conceptually it is easy, but for practical testing, there will be different methods which will be needed. So there is this one IEEE standard known as IEEE 115, which gives the standard testing procedures for these synchronous generators. There are different versions of this. The current version is 2009, IEEE 115 2009, which is currently active. In 2019, they have brought a draft of revision to the 2009 standards, but that is still under consideration. It is still at a draft level. So probably in a year or so, that new standard will be coming in place. The revision from time to time as the technology evolves, there is revision of the standards. But so far, the IEEE 115 2009 is the standard. And as per that document, there are 4 methods which are used for the efficiency testing, as given as the separate drive method, electric input method, retardation method, and cooler or the calorimetric method. So they have got different applications, as this paragraph mentions here. The separate drive method and the electric input method are direct measurements of efficiency, or the ratio of power output to the power input. These tests are applied in the factory to smaller machines, the first 2 ones. However, for larger machines, the mechanical driving power needed for direct measurements of input and output power is not available in the factory. In that case, efficiency is determined in the field by use of a segregated losses calculation, utilizing either the retardation method or calorimetric method. So these two, the second 2 are used more for the larger machines. So idea is that for the first 2 methods, they actually measure the actual power output and input at the rated value. So for smaller machines that might be feasible, but for larger machines that entire power supply might not be available. So the indirect methods are used, the third and the fourth one. And an accurate generator efficiency is very important. The efficiency value will be used again in the turbine index test calculations, which verify the turbine efficiency, because it's a coupled system. So accurate, if you have accurate efficiency of the generator, only then you can evaluate the turbine efficiency also accurately. So these tests are there, and okay, and we will actually, I'll just short while once we discuss the temperature rise test, then I will give this, actually discuss this. I'm planning to give this as an assignment. So temperature rise test, again, important thing, repeatedly we have been discussing that the amount of temperature rise which occurs in the windings is the limiting factor for the power output from the machine. So this is also known as the heat run test, and this temperature rise test is performed on the generator to verify that the component parts do not reach a temperature higher than their insulation can withstand. So as we discussed earlier also, we discussed during the conceptual discussion that there are these 4 classes, usually A, B, F and H classes of insulation, and depending upon which class of insulation is been deployed, there is a maximum temperature which the insulation can tolerate. And so class A is the you can say the lowest one, which is having the least value of temperature tolerance, and class H is the highest one. So usually the class B and class F are what are more common in between. And for these, as it says here, the maximum temperature, which the hotspot temperature which can be there, is 130 degrees Celsius and 155 degrees Celsius respectively. So this temperature rise test tends to monitor that how much is the temperature rise in these different components, the windings, insulation specifically. So the temperature rise for the generator components parts is identified in another ANSI standard C50.12. Just a second, I need to put the charger. Okay, so these standard values for temperature rise, those are identified in this ANSI standard. And values of the temperature rise not to be exceeded are listed and depend upon the method of temperature measurement, whether the generator is directly or indirectly cooled, and the maximum temperature of the fluid, either air or water, used for cooling the machine, among other variables. So all these variables, they determine how much maximum temperature rise can be tolerated, and those are given in this standard. The methods of loading the machine to determine the temperature rise. So how do you load the machine and how do you determine the temperature rise? These vary with the size of the generator. 4 methods are listed in IEEE 115, which with detailed explanations. So we will look at that shortly. For small hydro generators, the test consists of running the generator at rated load, frequency and voltage with a constant field current until the machine reaches a constant temperature. So for small generators, this is pretty straightforward, and you just run it at the rated load, frequency and voltage and constant field current till the machine reaches a constant temperature. Temperature readings are recorded every half hour or less to verify that the generator has reached this constant temperature. Then the final readings are compared to the allowable temperature rise to confirm that these temperatures are within the tabulated limits. So that is for smaller generators. For larger generators, this you cannot again load it at the rated values. It's not easy to do that. So for larger hydro generators, one of the other 3 methods listed in IEEE 115 must be used, because running the generator at rated load is not always possible or practical. And the reader should refer to 115 for complete explanation of these methods. So as you can see here, there are these 4 methods given for efficiency testing also in IEEE 115, and these 4 methods for temperature testing. Again, first one is direct, then there are 3 special methods which need to be done for temperature rise test. So what I plan to do is that I'll be giving this as an assignment. So for your reference, I'll be uploading this thing. Okay, just share this thing. So this is the IEEE 115 standard, and it's a long one, 219 pages document, but you need to refer only for the, if you want you can read more, but for this assignment you need to refer to the specific sections only. So I'll be uploading this in Teams, and so 2 things we will be looking at here. One is the efficiency tests, these 4, and there are 4 methods for efficiency testing as we discussed. And then for temperature rise tests, again there are these 4 methods which are given in the temperature test 6.2. You can refer to the methods of loading. So there, those 4 methods for temperature rise testing are also provided. So how we will do is that now, I mean, this time we will do, I mean, everyone doesn't need to do on all. So I will do the segregation and I'll allot different methods to different students so that you can accordingly focus on that. And we will have the presentations on next Monday. Meanwhile, you will get this 4 or 5 days to study it and prepare it. So you can prepare it as a presentation. I mean, either if you want, you can prepare it as a Word document and or as PPT, whatever. I mean, but yeah, Word document is definitely needed for your submission. And if you want to present through the Word document only, that is also okay. If you want to make a PPT out of that Word document and present that one, that is also appreciated. So we will just allot it right now. So first one for efficiency testing, we have the tests. As you will see, they are much more comprehensive. So what I'll do is that we'll allot one method of efficiency testing to 2 students. So separate drive, first 2 people, Anvesh. I'll upload this document also. You can refer to this for which particular. So separate drive method, Anvesh and Ashutosh, you can do the study on that and prepare the assignment and present it. Then we have the electric input method. Next 2 people, Harshvardhan and Kashif. Third method here is the retardation method. Nitish and Pramod. The heat transfer method for efficiency. This will go to Prashant and Pranit. These are the 4 efficiency testing methods. Temperature rise tests, in those out of 4, only one is little simple ones. We will give to only one, and the complicated give to 2 people. So these are the methods. So conventional loading method. Rajat. We have the synchronous feedback. Will be the zero power factor method is little bit more detailed. So that will go to 2 people. This will be for Shivam and Souvik. And then the last one, 4.7. So please, you have to study the given method for your thing which has been allotted to you, and prepare a report on that in Word file. And I mean, I would prefer if it is handwritten actually in this case, because here you have the document, so I want to appreciate this copy pasting. So in this case, actually, please do it. Make the handwritten report. So for each of these, please prepare your own handwritten report, and you can just share that during the presentation, or if someone wants to have a PPT. Okay, any questions?
So means if we make handwritten, so in that case we don't have to essentially make the PPT or Word file.
Yeah, no, see, Word file is ruled out. Only two things are there. One is that handwritten report is mandatory. That is the submission. So for each one, make your own handwritten report for your topic and submit that in the assignment. So that is mandatory. Second thing I'm saying is that PPT is optional. If you want to present, so because this we will have again, like we had this week, next week again, Monday we'll have this presentation. So now for that presentation, I'm giving you an option. If you want, you can just share your screen, the PDF, the scanned PDF of your handwritten notes. You can share that and you can present from that also. Or if someone wants to make a PPT and present to that, that is also welcome.
Okay.
So PPT is optional. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, and the last date for submission in the MS Teams portal will be Sunday, 27th, and the presentation will be on Monday, 28th. Any questions on this?
Sir, this is Prashant.
Yes, Prashant.
Sir, what any method that is for retransfer me and Pranit are there. So we have to individually made the same thing, or we will combine?
I would prefer if you can read the entire thing on your own. So it will be like parallel things. You will have your own and he will have his own thing.
Okay. Okay.
So while presentation we can see, we can segregate if needed, if time is less. Otherwise, both can present full also. So please prepare your own full thing. So for heat transfer method, do your own thing fully.
Okay. Okay. And sir, handwritten is necessary, or we and Word file?
No,
If we write.
handwritten is necessary, and it need not be a very long document. You don't need to write everything. Please understand one thing here. It's not the intent that you have to write everything. That is already there in the standard. You just write what you understood from that. So please paraphrase in your own words and write in your own words whatever is the salient points or whatever are the key features. Just write those in your own words. That is the intent for giving it as handwritten.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Any other questions on this?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Ashutosh.
Sir, what is the time length we should present for?
Typically, we would like to have for 5 minutes each, so that we can wind up in almost 1 hour or so. So just 5 minutes, brief presentation. What is this method about? How it is conducted? Some advantages, disadvantages, or drawback, or whatever shortcomings. Just salient points. So 5 minutes each. That is the presentation.
Okay.
Anything else? By the way, I guess these methods are quite long, so I mean, you can also, I think, yeah, that was the intent also. So for the efficiency testing methods, and I mean, wherever there are two partners actually, so maybe I would, you can distribute the work amongst yourselves. So instead of both doing all the work, you can distribute, because these are pretty long methods actually, most of them. So wherever we have a team of 2 people, you'll see there are a lot of subheadings in each of these. You can divide that amongst yourselves. Okay.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Yeah. So single.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah. Who is that?
Sir, अगर सर शिवम है
Shivam.
सर.
Go ahead.
ये सर जैसे कि अगर सर टीम में है तो मतलब और जो डिस्ट्रीब्यूट कर लेंगे तो जो डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड पार्ट है बस उस पर ही रिपोर्ट बनानी है या फिर पूरे पर रिपोर्ट बनानी है?
हाँ, डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड पे ही बनाओ, डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड बनाओ, क्योंकि those methods are longer actually, and that's why we have put 2 people. So wherever there are a team of 2
Okay.
people, you talk amongst yourselves and equally divide the work. How many subsections are there? Let's say there are 4 subsections, 2 you do and 2 the other person does, like that. So please divide amongst yourselves and make only separate presentation. I mean, only for your section. Make the report for your section only. So yeah.
Okay, sir.
Because these methods where only single person is there, these are very small methods, and whereas the longer methods I have put 2 people, so it's always makes sense. So just divide amongst yourselves. So report as well as presentation will be separate. I mean, only for the portion which you have studied. That's it, not for the entire method. Okay, any other questions?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay, good. So I will share this also and the other one also. Okay, so I'll share this one, and meanwhile time is almost over, so there are a few more tests. Okay, we will continue this in the next class. Any questions so far? Because this will take time. So we'll continue the some more tests are remaining, that will continue in the next class. Any questions or anything anyone has to share or ask?
This is Prashant, sir.
Yes, Prashant.
Sir, in the exam, which type of question, either long question or short question, maybe appear in this part, sir? In test.
Yeah, in the exam it will be a mix. There might be some small numericals also, because we did some numerical also, and we'll all doing further also we'll be doing some numericals. So it will be some numericals and some. It will be a mix. Some short answer questions, some long answer questions. It will be a mix of all those.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so if there are no questions, we'll just stop here.